Good morning. All right. So again, we are starting a new unit. We're finished with macromolecules and everybody's doing good. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think we almost have everybody. Might be missing one person, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, hopefully everybody is in Canvas. We are starting cell structure and transport. And this first section is an overview. It has the vocabulary, and I'm a firm believer in vocabulary is everything. If you understand what the words mean, you can understand what the questions are asking you. I'm going to go ahead. This video doesn't talk. You got to read the captions. So I'm going to go ahead and start that and it's really just an introduction. Okay. Watching that reminded me, I don't know, y'all are a little young, but my children grew up on the Magic School Bus. And you ever watch Magic School Bus? So that's kind of what that reminded me of, that we were getting ready to go inside the body and take a tour and see what's going on. So, and that's the thing I want you with biology. I want you to, again, look at it as this is about me. This is not just like math and what am I ever going to do with this in life. Biology is about you. This is actually going on inside of you as we speak. So, kind of related to this. This is about me and not just some random outside class that I'm learning. All right. So, in previewing this, we're going to be looking at introduction to cells, cell structure and membranes. And we kind of touched on this a little bit when we were looking at macromolecules and phospholipids. So we're going to look more at what the cell membrane is made of. So we'll come back to those phospholipids again. Organelles. Um, while we're looking at the cell by itself, we need to think of the cell as a whole unit, functioning, living thing. And just like we have organs in our body that make everything in our body work, the cell has to have those kinds of structures as well. So we're going to look at what is the function of all the little parts of the cell and how they carry out the functions on a cellular level so that we function on an organism level. And cell transport in particular, and the fact that spent a lot of time talking about microscopes because cells are microscopic. Okay. All right. So again, this first page, and we're not going to stay here. This is something you need to come back to from time to time and look at all of these vocabulary words. And you see it's a long list. And it's a long list because most of these are the parts of the cell. So as we go through about I would say 2/3 of this list are all of the organelles that are in the cell and what they do. So you will have to be able to label a cell and know what the function is of the parts that you're labeling. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. So again, come back to that often. This is something you should spend time studying. So we are on the next page already. And they came up with a nifty little acronym for cell. Um, um, this video again doesn't talk, but going back to the C for cell compartments, I'm going to kind of preview it a little bit. Um, it says seen by Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke was the first person to actually name a cell a cell. And he did that because he was thinking of prison cells are just a box. What he looked at under the microscope was a cork. So if you were to take a cork from a bottle and then shave it thin so that you could look at it under the microscope, um, what he saw were empty little boxes. And the reason he saw the empty little boxes was because cork cells are dead. So the boxes didn't have any living material in it. So while he's credited for naming things a cell, he didn't actually see a living cell. Okay, so then it's going to go on in the video and talk about other scientists who actually did take time and look at living cells. Okay, all right, then we have E is for every organism's building blocks. So we were talking about the macromolecules and that proteins were the building blocks of, I mean, amino acids, building blocks of proteins, and um, monomers were building blocks of the other substances. But those were just individual non-living molecules. Now we're talking about all these molecules functioning together to make a living thing. And I believe we started the year off talking about Miss Grin, which were all the 7 things that a living thing must do. On a cellular level, a cell must do all of those things. So once you have a unit that can do all of those things, then we can call that a living thing. And so cells are the building blocks of all living things. And they are the building blocks of all processes, have to be carried on a cellular level. And then the last L is for little factories for proteins. Proteins, um, one of the organelles is, well, most of the organelles in there, we call them little factories because they all have a job to make something for the cell. But we have little factories that make proteins, and proteins are important in building tissues so that we can have an organism. Okay, so that's just a little acronym for cell. Again, the video that you're going to look at, she goes through the different scientists that are attributing their research to the study of cells. And then we're going to come back to cell theory. It doesn't talk either. You got to read. All right, I'm going to pause this right here because this is what you need to know from this. So basically what the video was showing you that it took several scientists over time to come up with what we know now as the cell theory. So first guy, Robert Hooke, he decided, looked at what he thought was living things. But like I said, he was just looking at cork cells. So they weren't living. They were empty boxes. Plant cells are rectangular. And so again, what he looked at under the microscope was little rectangular boxes. And he said, well, since this cork came from a tree, then trees must be made of these little cells. Okay. Then the next guy came along and he specialized in making microscope. So he looked at all kinds of things and he realized that all living things are made of these little tiny boxes, little things called cells. But the cells that he looked at were living. So he also noticed that they also had function and structure, so he added that too. So now we have living things are made of cells. They are basic unit of structure and function. And then we have these guys, these two scientists that are basically attributed to the rest of the cell theory. That one was a botanist and one was a zoologist. So one looked at plant cells and the other specialized in looking at animal cells. And they too um, studied the fact that they both have the same things in common. Therefore, all living things, um, not just plants, not just animals, are made up of cells. So you do need to know this. So I would make a note of that. I'm going to leave it up for about 2 minutes and let you make a note of that. And I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so I can do the attendance. So because you do have to know the parts of this. There's questions that come up that say, is this a part of the cell theory? Is this not a part of the cell theory? So make a note of this where you keep your notes. And I'll get back to you in a few minutes while I do the attendance. I'll shrink that down. And if you're doing something clever like copying and pasting, you can go on to look at the next box on the page that has the interactive slides that you need to read. Missing Landon. Okay. It's nice that this is a small class and attendance taking goes very quickly. I also appreciate that you all are on time for class. We do want to make sure that we're starting the first 5 minutes of class. So logging on quickly is a wonderful thing, and I do appreciate you for that. All right, let me come back to sharing. Okay. All right. So hopefully you finished writing down. So again, the steps of the mod. So you need to know the modern cell theory, that all living things are made up of cells. That's a basic fundamental principle. The cell is the structure and functional unit of life. Again, we're going to spend a lot of time in the next couple of days looking at all of the organelles that are inside the cell, how they function, and how they're functioning properly makes the whole organism function properly. All cells come from pre-existing cells. In other words, they don't just materialize out of thin air. Okay, or they don't just gobbledygook doesn't make cells. Other cells make cells. So we're going to be studying cell division or reproduction and how there are different ways that cells can reproduce, but they're all one cell and one organism is always coming from another organism. Um, Cells contain information that is inherited. We're going to we're going to look at the fact there are two different kinds of cells. Some have a nucleus which encases the DNA and some don't, but both in any case, all cells will have DNA or genetic material inside that give instructions for making the next cell. I think the cells are basically the same in chemical composition. So we're going to look at if we study a general plant cell and then we study a general animal cell, we're going to know that all cells in all plants and animals function basically as the models that we're going to look at. And all energy flow, metabolism, and biochemistry occurs within the cell. So the same way you have chemical activities going on within you, again, they start on the cellular level. When we look at respiration, we're going to look at it on a cellular level. Okay. All right. So again, those steps are important. Please make sure that you know those. All right. Um, in addition, we're going to look at different types of cells, and some have some structures and others don't have other structures. But what they all do have, they all have a cell membrane. Sometimes it's called a plasma membrane. They all have cytoplasm. We're going to learn all of these as well as composition structure. But cytoplasm is the jelly stuff that everything else floats in. Okay. And DNA, in other words, they have to have instructions. DNA is like the commander in chief of the cell. It tells everybody else what to do. So it gives instructions. So all cells have to have instructions. And basically, the instructions that they give are how to make proteins. So our proteins are made in the ribosomes. So while some cells don't have all the sophisticated parts that other cells have, they're going to have ribosomes because they need to make protein because that's important for making another cell. Okay. All right. Take a minute to read through these slides. Again, um, cells are teeny tiny. We have to have them look under the microscope to see them. And we'll have some activities that will allow you to do some virtual microscope activities. Okay, so just take a minute to read through these slides, go through. You advance it at your rate. I'm just advancing to where I want to stop. But you take a few minutes to read. Take 2 minutes to read through those slides. Okay, so coming back to this slide, what we want to look at is, well, I'll go back just a little bit. Um, all right, depending on the surface area. So as you see, they're different. You can take a cube out of a bigger cube, and as you put many cubes together, you have more surface area. So basically, the smallest cube is what we would look at it as being a single cell. And as a single cell, you could only take in so much material because you only have a certain amount of surface area that's available for things to enter the cell. But you add that cell to another set of cells, so tissues, and if the tissues are working together, they have more surface area. They can take in more stuff. And then we add that to a larger one, such as an organism, and they can take in more stuff as well. So the larger the organism, the more surface area it has, the more materials that it can absorb from its environment. So that's kind of the importance of increased surface area there. Everything has to be, the cell is absorbing things from its environment that it needs to function. So it has to have a proper amount of surface area to do that. There's two types of organisms. There are unicellular organisms that function that are only one cell big, thus the uni, and they have everything they need to function as a one cell organism, okay, such as bacteria and amoeba. Then we have multicellular organisms such as ourselves, and we have many cells working together as a unit in order to create all of the necessary functions that we need to carry out life. So those are two words you need to be aware. Again, a lot of vocabulary: multicellular, unicellular. Okay, two more vocabulary words you need to be able to distinguish the difference between: prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes, now both cells, all kinds of cells have nucleic material. Prokaryotes have the nucleic material just swirling around. So the little green one, it just has the DNA floating around in the cytoplasm. It does not have an encased structure called a nucleus. Eukaryotes have, in addition to having a cell membrane, they have a nuclear membrane, and the DNA is restricted to the nucleus. Okay, so that's the difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. And it goes on most of the time. Prokaryotes are usually plant cells, but eukaryotes can be either plant or animal. Okay, so we're going to be looking at plant cells, animal cells, and what the couple of structures that they have that are different. All right, this, I think this video is out of place, but it's here, so we'll look at it. But it looks at what we call differentiation. So how we start from one cell and makes many cells, and we have a full functioning organism. All right, so we'll take a few minutes to look at this, and then we'll do that check-in and we'll move on.
All vertebrates start the same way, as one fertilized egg cell. The egg will divide and form new cells, and these divide to form more cells over and over. At first, an embryo's development seems chaotic. It soon begins taking on exquisite order. Fields of cells fold and slide over each other. These cells are gathering in a long line and rolling into a tube. This is the beginning of a spinal cord. Cell differentiation has taken place. Other cells are becoming heart cells and are forming a primitive beating heart. Each cell is ordered by a genetic program to form organs, limbs, tissue, to construct a body plan. At these early stages of embryonic development, it's hard to tell whether this is a chick, a frog, or a human being. Here, bumps on the limb develop into feathers, And as the chick outgrows its space and food supply, it is time to hatch.
All right, so basically they just wanted to give you a visual. Give me one sec. We have a late student. Okay. All right. Good morning, Kashawn. We're in Canvas, we covered introductions to cells. That's where we are now. We're about to move on from there. All right. Now, this one didn't work for me last time because for some reason my spots don't stick, but take a minute to do a check. You're going to drag the words into the boxes and see if they stay. Mine didn't stay. See if yours do. All right, a cell that lacks a nucleus. So if you go back up to the little paragraph that we read, which one has a nucleus and which one doesn't? A cell that has a nucleus and a membrane-bound organelles are which one? And an organism composed of more than one cell is. Are yours working for you? Is my last class mine? This is supposed to see mine keeps running back. It won't stay. All right, but this one, that one stayed. This one, I don't know what's wrong with this thing. There we go. Let me see if I can get this one to stay now. It won't stay. Okay. Well, that's where it's supposed to go. And consequently, because mine won't stay in the spot, it's going to tell me I only got 2 out of 3, but I really got 3 out of 3. But so the prokaryote is the cell that lacks a nucleus. The cell that has a nucleus and a membrane is a eukaryote, and an organism composed of more than one cell is multicellular. Okay, so again, vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. That's just vocabulary right there. Okay, haven't even got into structure yet. So again, these are the basic things that we need to know from what we did today, is that and you had an expanded cell theory, but this is the 3 main points of the cell theory is that all living things are composed of one or more cells. New cells come from old cells, and a cell is the basic unit of structure and function for all living things. Okay, so again, not only are they made of cells, all living things made of cells, but it is the basic place for structure and function. Okay, you are held together by cells. You are functioning because your cells function properly. And here's our 2 vocabulary words, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. And the little video that we saw talked about differentiation, meaning that these cells don't just make another cell like itself. Some cells actually become something else. So we have some cells that go on to make the spinal cord, some make the brain, some make the stomach, some make eyes. And so the cells differentiate. They change into different types of cells because they've been instructed to do a different job. But when we look at them, later on, we're going to see that they all have to have a nucleus. The things that we had at the top, they're all going to have cytoplasm, a cell membrane, and a ribosomes. They're all going to have those, even though they're going to have look slightly different because they have a different function. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, I don't think I published this one, so let me publish it now. Make sure it is assigned to you. So you might have to refresh your page so that we're on to cell membranes. Okay. All right. So let me know if you can't. What happened to my screen? Oh, okay. All right. Now, again, while we were looking at macromolecules, we talked about phospholipid bilayer. So we're going to be looking more at that. We're going to start with the cell membrane because, as it says, it is the gatekeeper for the cell. If everything has to get through this gate to get inside the cell, and we want things to get in. Say, well, you have to eat, you have to put the food inside your body. The cell membrane is regulates all the materials that come in and go out of the cell. So it is nicknamed the gatekeeper. All right, so let's look at this.
One of the most important and complex structures of the cell is its outer boundary, known as the cell or plasma membrane. The cell membrane serves two main functions. It protects the internal parts of the cell, and it regulates which substances enter and exit. The cell membrane is selected.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it there. If you're taking notes, and you should be, let me go back and write down what's the function. What's the function of the cell membrane? And he mentioned two. So I'm gonna take it back a little bit and let him repeat that. All right, let's start there. So I can, has two main functions. All right, the first one is it regulates which substances enter and exit the cell. Okay, I'm gonna start it from here.
Enter and exit. The cell membrane is selectively permeable, restricting the flow of traffic into and out of the cell to specific molecules. It, in essence, acts as a gatekeeper. The cell membrane consists of phospholipid molecules and proteins. A closer look at a phospholipid molecule reveals that it is composed of a hydrophilic or water-seeking head and a hydrophobic or water-repelling tail. The phospholipid molecules that make up the cell membrane are in constant motion. Proteins that help make up the cell membrane perform several important tasks, including transporting molecules into and out of the cell. Some proteins act as small pumps, actively transporting molecules from one side of the membrane to the other.
Okay.
One of the
Whoop.
most important and
All right, so the other thing that you should have, um, as far as structure is concerned, it consists of molecules. We're just not even, we're going to say phospholipid molecules and proteins. Okay. Oops. Phospholipid molecules and proteins. And he didn't. All right, and as we looked at when we were talking about bilipid layers before, um, one end of it, and we're going to look at this a little closer in a minute, is attracted to the water. So that's going to let water in, and then the tail part of it, so there's a head and the tail part to it, is the end that repels water. Okay, let's see if I can. All right, I'm going to let this go because I know we're going to look at it. Hydrophilic and hydrophobic. You need to know those two words in terms of this biphospholipid layer. Hydrophilic and hydrophobic. When something is phobic, it's usually afraid of it, so it's repelled. This case, it's water. So it's going to be either attracting the water or repelling the water. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop this because I know we're going to look at it in a second. All right, so it protects from the environment and regulates what goes in and out. That's its two functions. Okay, this is what it would actually look like when we say a bilipid layer. Okay, that's another word you need to write down. Let me come back here. Come back, come back, come back, come back. There we go. Selectively permeable. You need to understand what that means. And it means exactly what it says. It selects. Permeable means it allows things to pass through, but it is selectively permeable in that it does not allow everything to pass through. So think of the screen on your window. The screen on your window selects what comes through, lets the air in. It might even let microscopic dusts and things come through, but basically it holds out everything you don't want to come into your room. Okay, so if you think of your room as the cell and the screen as the cell membrane, it is selecting what comes in and what goes out. So that's a word vocabulary word you need to know. All right, we'll come back to that word as well. Okay. Fluid mosaic model. Write that word down too. Fluid mosaic model. So the cell membrane that we're going to show you is referred to as the fluid mosaic model. Mosaic means that it's got different parts and structures in it, and not all of them look the same. And fluid is that it's not rigid, it's not solid. It's going to be flexible and flow for the cell. Okay, so fluid mosaic model simply refers to the picture that we're going to look at of the cell membrane. Okay. All right, so this is it. This is it. So this is our fluid mosaic model. It says try to label the diagram below. Now, you haven't done anything to, but I'm going to give you a worksheet where you actually will have a labeled diagram. So let's look at this answer key. So download the answer key. Yes, download the answer key. And it's not showing on your screen, so I'm going to have to stop sharing and come back and share in a minute. But you download the answer key, you should get a Word document. That doesn't exactly help. All right. Because it's not labeled. All right, that doesn't help. Okay. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, but you study that. Look at the because they're not numbered. So I don't know how that answer key is going to help you because it's not numbered. But study that for a minute and I'm going to give you one that is labeled. Okay. And the best place for me to put it right now is in your discussion area. So that's where we're going to put it. All right, so if you look at, it would be nice if you could download this diagram. So you should have, check your discussion. You should have the fully labeled diagram. Check, let me know if you got it. Okay. Okay. Are you not able to access any of the modules that I'm in? Is everybody, because I see the note in the chat, are you able to access this module that I was showing? You can't? No? I don't know why. Did you refresh your page? Because you should be able to access it. Let me share. Let me go back to sharing. Hold on. Give me 1 minute to come back. No. Okay. All right. Okay. Can you access this in your, while I'm checking on the other, look in your discussion. Can you access this? Yeah. Okay. Study that for a moment. And while you're studying that, let me make sure the module is published. I bet I know why. There we go. All right, why? Because what happens is I keep publishing the individual modules without publishing the whole unit. All right, so I apologize. While I'm assigning all these things to you, they are not published. The unit has to be, I'm learning. The unit has to be published in addition to each of the modules. Okay, so it should be published now. So you should be able to look at, and what I'm going to do here is to move this discussion. Okay, so now I have to refresh. Where'd it go? All right, so can you all get in the modules now? Yes? Okay, thank you. All right. Go next. All right, so if you're in the module now, I put this so that this flows with the next slide. Okay, and it's just, while it's in discussion, it's just for you to look at the labeled parts of the cell. Okay, so let me go back just a little bit. Make sure I put this in the right place. All right, so the diagram that I just gave you looks like this one. And while this downloading the answer key doesn't help, it just, because it's not numbered or labeled, the next slide should give you that same picture, fully labeled, like that. Okay, so as you see, it's not a straight line, it's kind of flowing a little bit, so that you understand that it is it is a fluid mosaic. Notice they have different colors, different structures, some kind of protrude above the cell, the membrane, and some are embedded in the cell membrane. So you need to know what all of these are. So you've got, they show you that if you took one of these little molecules, you have the hydrophilic heads, and I'm looking at the right side of the molecule right now. You have your hydrophilic heads, and those are the ones that like the water. So on the outside, it's going to attract the water. Your hydrophobic ones are what they're calling the little tail parts. And if you put the two sets of these together, it makes up the phosphobilipid layer. Okay. All right. And again, it's made of fats because we just talked about lipids being fat. So these are fat molecules that help make up the cell membrane. All right. So then we have other structures. You have this little blue wiggly thing that is an alpha helix protein. Some of these are not fun to say. And again, helix meaning that it's wrapped in a spiral. We're going to come with that word helix again when we talk about DNA. You have some surface proteins. You have some embedded proteins. And we're going to look at these embedded proteins actually act as little canals. Some things, like I mentioned the cell membrane being like a screen. So tiny things that can go through the screen will just flow through the cell membrane. But there are some big things outside the cell membrane that it wants to get in the cell. So these little channels, they call this one that says on the left side I'm looking at, it says protein channel. So it's not just a glob in the cell, it actually has a job to open and close and allow larger molecules to pass through. Again, selecting what it wants to come in and what it doesn't want to come in. Okay. All right. So that is in so that's the answer key to the diagram on the other page. Okay. All right, so take a minute to go through um, all of these matching questions. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. I'll be right back. Okay. Um, so let's look at these answers real quick, and then I want you to look at the link that I put in the chat. All right, so another name for cell membrane. What'd you pick? Let me let you tell me. What'd you pick? And somebody can just type it in the chat. Don't all jump at once. Thank you. Plasma membrane. All right, let's some things in and out of the cell, but not everything. What'd you pick for that one? And it shouldn't be Natalie. Natalie answered the first one, so somebody else answered the second one. What'd you put? Thank you, Zay. This cell membrane. Now, that's good. However, because it said, but not everything, we want to, because that's a right answer and a wrong answer. So it is the cell membrane, but because of the way it said it, we want to say selectively permeable. Okay. Yeah. And so again, look at everything that it's asking you. So it is a cell membrane, but because it's asking you to, or telling you that it lets some things in and some things not, that means it's selectively permeable. All right, the bilipid layer with the proteins embedded in it, that is our fluid mosaic model. The phosphate head, and I'm sorry, I should have been asking you all to tell me. Phosphate head with two fatty acids. The cell membrane is made up of many phospholipid layers. And actually, you might want to, did they switch those two? Okay. All right, let's see. Yep, they had it the other way. Okay, go back. Yeah, they had it the way I had it the first time. Select, so they, yeah. And then they didn't even give you that choice, did they? Okay. But they give you a, that which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they give you phospholipids in the question. So anyway, switch these two around. It should be this should be the plasma membrane, that should be the fluid mosaic layer. Okay. All right. What I want you to do, and I'll put the link back in the chat again. I want you to go to this link and kind of explore what this cell looks like. So let's look at, so click on the link that's in the chat there. And where's mine? It should take you here. Sorry about my phone going off all the time. Okay. All right, so this is an interactive website. It'll allow you to choose whether you want to look at, and then you can take the volume off of it because that's loud. But what you can do with this, and we'll use this a couple of times, is to click on each of the organelles down at the bottom and it highlights it in the picture. But not only does it do that, it also, if you click on the word, it'll give you a paragraph that tells you about the structure. So I want you to spend the rest of this morning looking at this. And then when you're ready, you can come back, click on animal cell and you come back. And is everybody able to open this? And you're not just looking at my page. You can do this on your own. Yes. Shake your head up and down. It's blocked. Okay, let's see if we can get permission. Okay, I'm finding that another way to get around this sometimes is to embed it. And okay, if I embed this in here, it will allow you to do it. And search. Let's see if I just placed it here. Okay. No, that's not what I want to do. External link. Okay. Like I said, you have to find more than one way to skin a cat sometimes. Oops. All right, so now try it. Now that it's in your discussion, try it as a discussion link. And let me know if that helps. Will it work from discussion? Is it working? No? Ooh, that noise. All right, so again, we got a few minutes. So again, you just click on the words and it'll identify. So we are actually you will be tested on this eventually as we go through. You'll have a picture of a cell. You'll have to know which parts are which and what they do. So if you can just click on the words, look at them. In general, start with the nucleus so that you know so you can do it two ways. You can just scroll your mouse over the picture, or you can start with the words, and the words will, when you word highlights the structure in the picture, when you click on the word, it brings up a paragraph that you can read. Okay. All right. So again, did it work in discussion? I'm going to add that discussion into the module. So if it works, I will. If it does, it didn't work. No, it's still blocked for everybody. Oh, y'all are not talking to me. I need to know, did this work or not? It works. Okay. Piper, are you able to get it? It's still blocked for you. You don't know why. Um, did you refresh your page? And I'm going to go ahead and come out of this and put, let me come over here. And I'm going to add it to the module and see if that helps. Mm. Mm, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to come back over here. Okay, so I've embedded it in the module. It worked before, but now it's blocked. Okay, I'm going to have to figure out why that is. But in the meantime, class is up. It's 11:25. So we will figure out why that's blocked and make it work by next class. Okay, so you all have a great weekend. Bye.